stop translating their red flags into potential and start seeing them as the person that they are showing up as now. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. I hope we're all okay. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to the Bank Holiday Friday. If you are living in the UK, we've got another bank holiday. I feel like there has been so many bank holidays recently. I know they do come in quite quickly, but I never remembered them being this close together, ever. So we've got another bank holiday this weekend. Lo and behold, the great British weather is just coming through. It's going to rain on Saturday. I don't think it's going to be very nice weather on Monday. But fingers crossed, we are holding out for a nice day today and a nice day on Sunday. Why is it that bank holiday weather, it always happens like that? It's like so nice throughout the week, and then it gets to the bank holiday weekend and it's like, everyone's got an extra day off work. Let's just make sure it's got rubbish weather. So I'm actually here this bank holiday weekend. I keep looking around my house and thinking, oh my God, I can't wait to get to grips with that. I can't wait to clean that. I can't wait to mow my lawn. I can't wait to treat my grass. I'm like hardcore adulting this weekend. My grass is my pride and joy. It's so weird. Ever since, like in my old house, I didn't really care for the grass. I didn't really care about the garden, to be fair. It was always semi-finished as well. We were like starting the garden just as my ex was leaving. And we'd put in like foundations for the shed and that never got finished. And I think like, I just didn't care about it. I love the garden, but it was 99% patio as well. We had this massive, great patio. And it was funny, the other day I was on my Instagram and I saw a story from like 3-4 years ago, and it was like, why have we got such a big patio? I don't understand. And then there was like a video of my ex with like all of his bikes and his jet skis and everything out on the patio. So I didn't really take much notice of the garden in my old house, but this house, I really take notice, and I really, really, really love my garden. So I'm a bit sad because where my garden's a sun trap, and I get the sun on my garden all day and it singed my grass, and there's a big brown patch and it looks rubbish. One of my friends is a gardener, and I messaged him the other day and I was like, what can I do to this? And he was like, you're just going to have to water it and reseed it. And I took out one of the flower beds that was at the bottom of the garden because I didn't like it. And I reseeded, like put grass down, and the grass didn't grow for a very long time. So I'm a bit sad because it's like the front stretch, literally as you walk out of my patio doors, it's just like this big brown stretch of grass. So I'm going to try and get to grips with that this weekend. I'm going to try and treat it and see if I can resurrect my grass from the dead, because I am sad about it. But I also am going to deep clean my house. Something that I have done is that I have postponed my cleaner for a bit, just because I'm trying to save as much money as possible. So I usually see as like cleaning as like time where I'd rather pay somebody to do it than do it myself. But I'm actually quite looking forward to like deep cleaning my house tomorrow. And like I said, if the weather's not great, then I will most likely be nursing a slight hangover. I'm going to take tomorrow just to do all of my adult admin, get on top of all of my bills and just like things that I kind of just like push to the side and don't really pay any attention to in the week. So yeah, I am looking forward to the bank holiday, to be fair. My last bank holiday was pretty chill, and this bank holiday has been pretty chill. And I think I said either on my hour-long episode last week or on my Patreon that like I am on a saving hype this year. I realised that I hadn't actually logged on to ASOS for that long, that I didn't know the layout had changed. I didn't realise that the next day delivery wasn't great anymore. I actually haven't bought anything new clothing wise other than my running trainers for the whole year. And for somebody who has a real like addiction to shopping, that's really good. I also sat and told my parents the other day that I had tried to get cheaper versions of my perfume, and I I didn't like the cheaper versions, so I am going to treat myself to some new perfume this weekend because I am down to like the last little bits of my perfume. So I think there are some things that you can kind of find dupes of, some things that you can't. I'm introducing some new skincare into my regime because that's something that I won't scrimp on, but I genuinely haven't bought anything new for so long, and I am really proud of myself. And I'd put quite a lot of stuff on Vinted, and Wednesday, I went to go see my sisters because we had the kids, and I was wearing a pair of like all black combat trousers, and they were on my Vinted and they've not sold. And I kept them up there for about 3 weeks, lowered the price to what I think that like the lowest I would have gone to and the lowest I would have accepted for them. They didn't sell. So I was like, do you know what? There was nothing wrong with them. I just overbought with them. So they were brand new, never been worn, tags on, which a lot of my stuff on Vinted is brand new, has tags on. I just used to forget to do the returns. It's so bad. And I wore them, and my sisters even commented. They were like, are they new? I was like, technically no, but yes. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, they're not new, but they are new. They had the tags on, but they were on my Vinted. I was going to sell them. And then I just thought, you know what, I want to wear a pair of new trousers this weekend. So I thought I would trial them and see what you thought. And they were like, they're really nice. And then I had to prove to them that they were on my Vinted, that I haven't bought anything new. And they were like, you're doing really well. So I think that is going to change throughout the summer now, because I have some really nice summer plans. I'm going to the races, I've got loads of hen dos, I've got weddings, I'm abroad. But I'm going to try and be really sensible with how I spend my money and what I buy. And I'm going to try and repurpose a few things. Do you know what I'm a nightmare for in the summer is bikinis? And I sorted out my bikini drawer the other day, and I have an unnecessary amount of bikinis. Like it is unnecessary. And I think I used to buy brand new. Me and my ex used to go on holiday like twice a year. I used to buy brand new every single time we'd go on a holiday. So I don't think I'm going to purchase new bikinis, but I have got a wedding abroad and I need to get some new outfits for that, because I think we've got like dinners planned and parties, and I want some new outfits for that. So I will go out and buy new outfits specifically for that. I have also muted all of the girls that I follow on Instagram who do fashion hauls, because I am a nightmare for Zara. If I see something new in Zara, you best believe that I am either online or in the store the next week buying what I've seen. I am very easily influenced when it comes to clothes, very easily influenced when it comes to perfume as well. Like if someone's wearing a nice perfume, I'll always be like, oh my God, what perfume is that? And the next day go out and buy it. I am very much like that. I've always made sure and worked hard to have the disposable income that I can go and spend on clothes. And you know, I would stay sober and not drink on a night out to save myself money to go and spend in Zara. I've always been like that, even from my uni days. Now obviously as I'm older I can kind of sometimes do both, but even still, like even now I've been a bit like on my saving spree. Like this weekend I know that I'm going out this evening with my friends. I'm going out Sunday with my friends. So I'm like, that money could I have spent on some new perfume and probably stayed sober? But sometimes you got to do both, haven't you? I can't believe actually that it is Friday and I am like recording again on a Friday because I've just had a hectic week. But I do find that it is good because I can kind of debrief my whole week with you, and I can talk to you about what I've put out on Patreon, and it does work well. But obviously the rush of like being able to record, edit, do everything, rewatch it is quite hectic on a Friday, but it keeps me busy, which is good. And it keeps me out of the pub early doors, because I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing that my best friend works in a school, so he finishes work at 3:30. And I am on the way back from where he works, and he always pops in, and we are always so tempted to go to the pub at 3:30. We're like, should we go to the pub? Especially today, because I know that he's got half term next week. So I am out this evening, and I am looking forward to it. I'm out with the same people Friday and Sunday. We've decided to do Friday and Sunday because bank holiday is for going out and being with your friends, especially if the weather is nice, especially if you can sit in a beer garden. That's what my ideal at home bank holiday is going to be. And like I said, like it is, we are at the end of May now, and the whole of June, I think I am pretty much booked weekend wise. July and August are ridiculous. September's stupid, to be fair. And so I'm actually taking this time to be at home and just pottering around. I seen this thing online and it was like, I'm just enjoying my mortgage. Like I pay like near on £800 a month to live in this house. And so I'm just going to enjoy it, you know? So yeah, like I said, being able to record on a Friday is good because I can update you with what's gone on my Patreon this week. This week I have done a book review on the Mel Robbins Let Them theory. I've listened to that. I had it on audiobook. I've been listening to it on my 10,000 steps a day walks. I fully recommend it. So that book review is on my Patreon. I've also done my first proper episode on manifesting. Now, I wanted to put it out to my Patreoners because I have a really good relationship with them and I pretty much know all of them on there and their circumstances, and we've got good friendships like being built over there. I check in with them and they message me and we have like big deep chats, or you know, one of the girls messaged me the other day like, oh my god, you never guess what has happened. And because I know their stories, I can relate. And it's like, I know when I went through my breakup, I was so lucky that I had the family and the friends that I had, because I could talk over a situation to death and it would make no difference to them whatsoever. They wouldn't mind being, you know, hearing the same story over and over again. However, I know sometimes that like you don't want to go over something again with your friends. Like you don't want to be like, oh my God, this, because you don't know what the reaction is going to be. And I always go back to this, and you know, I've gone like up and down with whether or not I should have said more about my breakup earlier. And I do sometimes wish that I did speak up about my breakup a little bit earlier and not keep it such a secret. But then on the other hand, I wasn't ready to hear people say nasty things about my ex. I didn't want people to slate him. I still loved him. And so like, I know how it feels to go to your friends and think, oh my God, I'm talking about this situation again. Like, you know, and feel like a little bit of a burden, which you shouldn't do. But I'm pretty certain that your friends also don't feel like that. However, you can't sometimes escape that feeling. And so being able to have me as an outlet might actually do you some good, and being able to say like, I'm going to talk about the situation to Lou over and over and over and over, and I'm going to just get it out and get everything out. And you know, I had 100 messages off of one of my Patreoners because I think she must have just been typing as she was feeling, and I loved that. Like, you can come over that and you can fully open up to me and we can chat. I'm not a therapist, although I do feel like I could probably coach people through their breakups, and that is something that I am going to be looking into in the not so distant future. But come over there, come and have a chat. It's $4.50 a month, and with that you get 2 extra episodes on a Wednesday. They drop on a Wednesday. Everything's loaded on there. Even this hour-long episode, that gets loaded on there, so you don't have to jump between apps. You can just stay on Patreon and you get to chat to me. And I am active in my DMs, and I hope that people do say that I am active in my DMs. It might take me a few days to get back to you. I'm going to sit and go through my TikTok DMs and TikTok comments tomorrow, because when you have a video that blows up, it kind of goes a bit mental. And I've had 2 this week get over 100,000 views, which brings in more people to find me, which is great. But it also brings in the comments, and I do like to reply to all my comments and reply to all of my DMs, in amongst the people asking if I could be their sugar baby, because that's always there as well. I must get about 6 or 7 messages a day like, hey, are you looking for a sugar daddy? And they're obviously spam accounts. I would sometimes wish that they weren't, because they're offering me massive sums of money. But I do like to go through and I do like to reply to my DMs to build a rapport and know that people know that they're following an actual human being. So yeah, I'm going to have a weekend of adult admin and TikTok and Instagram admin as well. I'm going to create some new content, which is going to be loads of fun, because primarily it's what I love doing. I love creating content. I love helping people, and I hope that that comes through my content. And I hope that, you do feel like my content is helping you. So today I am going to talk about letting people show up how they show up in the world without any excuses. I didn't know what to call this episode because I didn't actually know how to explain it, but primarily, I found myself making excuses for my ex all the time. I still do it. I still make excuses for him. I make excuses for people. This doesn't have to just relate to your ex or to an ex. It can relate to anybody. I think that being able to let people actually show who they are to the world and to you. And I think a lot of the hurt comes from then trying to convince yourself they're not that person because you're confused as to how they've become that person. And just relating it back to your breakup and my breakup, I actually could not believe the person that my ex had become because he hadn't been that person for such a long time. And then all of a sudden, the minute that I started pushing back, the minute that I started saying hold on a second, that's not fair, you can't do that, or pointing the finger and saying, well, I've got evidence of this, he turned into a person that I really did not know. And then I found myself, because I couldn't believe it and didn't want to believe it, I found myself making excuses saying, he's just going through a hard time, this is all just very intense. And actually, 3 years on from our breakup, he's not really changed from the person he was post-breakup. You have to allow somebody to show the world who they are and show up and show you who they are in order for you to create a boundary or find your power in order to step back and say, do you know what? I'm not making excuses for you anymore. That is your behavior, and it's either embarrassing, it's disrespectful, and that's on you. That's not on me. And I want to deep dive into it because I'm not saying that you should accept their behavior. So I'm going to talk to you about some mindset shifts that you can have. I'm going to talk to you about some practical advice about being able to almost find comfort in the fact that your ex or a person in your life has shown up in a certain way and how that doesn't have anything to do with you, and how to stop making excuses. Because I feel like when I went through my breakup and people were saying nasty things about my ex, I was then defending him because I didn't want people to say nasty things about him, and I didn't want people to think that he was a horrible person. Instead of stepping back and saying hold on a second, this is bizarre behavior or nasty behavior or disrespectful behavior, and being able to say to people point blank, he did this, and not he did this, but I think he's going through this at the moment, or she did that, and actually, to be fair, if I broke it down, she is going through a rough time. No, why are we making excuses for poor behavior? And I have said this recently over and over again. Just because you're going through a bad time and a hard time, it doesn't give you an excuse to be nasty to people. And I know that I've been in a situation where I've snapped or I've said something and been like, hey, so sorry, I'm just feeling a bit stressed at the moment. If they don't apologize for their behavior, that's how they want you to perceive them. So allow it. And I say it a lot because I would always say when I shut the front door and, the person that I showed up as outside was not the person that I was when I shut the front door, because I'd shut the front door, I'd take my mask off and I would just break down, and I would look at myself and be like, how the hell is this my life? Why am I living through this absolute just horrible heartbreak and this really difficult time? I know that some of that did come out sometimes, and I did snap at somebody, and I did feel immense pressure to show up as being this strong person when I genuinely didn't have the strength. And so sometimes I was, snappy to my parents saying I don't want to do that because I can't face that person, or I don't want to go to that event because I can't face that person. Or if I'd had a drink and I'd snapped or lashed out, I would always then apologize for my behavior because I would know that that person didn't deserve it just because I was going through a hard time. But when people don't apologize and say, hey, do you know what? That was really out of order of me. why are we making excuses? So I'm going to deep dive into that because I always say this, and I think I'm a bad omen, but ever since my breakup, it was almost like my breakup started a catalyst of breakups. Because ever since my breakup, I feel like I have guided quite a few of my close friends through breakups, which has been wild. And because at the time that I was going through my breakup, I was looking around at some people's relationships thinking, oh my God, I cannot believe that I had that and now they've got it and I haven't. And obviously, because I was one of the people in the friendship group that had a relationship for such a long time, it was like hard for me to sort of digest. I'm now almost coaching my best friends through their breakups. And I've been saying more and more and more, well, that's who they are then. And people say, oh, yeah, but they're probably just going through a rough time. Yeah, but I always say that people don't change for the better. People change for the worse and allow it and just watch them and watch them burn every single bridge that they have with people, because that's what tends to happen. The more that they show up as the person that they are post breakup, the more they will find that they are burning bridges with people. And I think sometimes you can think in your head, why do they get to go out and live like that? Why do they get to move on? Why do they get to be happy? Why do they get to go and find another relationship? All these questions that you are asking yourself, because I asked myself these. And now I look and I think, yeah, they got all of that, but they've lost 50% of their friendship group. I would much rather show up as a person that people aren't going to say, she's nice, but she did do this. I would much rather people say like, yeah, no, she's nice, and not have to say, but she did do that, or she did do that to so-and-so, or she has got that reputation. And I take great pride and great comfort in that. So I have been saying to my friends a lot recently, just let them show up like that, allow it, and stop making excuses. And I'll stop them dead in their tracks when they say, but, and I'm like, but nothing. There is no excuses for bad behaviour, especially if it was from somebody who had loved you, you were married to, you're in a relationship with, you've got children with. They should not be disrespecting you just because you are having a hard time with processing your breakup. And I said this all the time to my ex. I cannot help the way that I feel about this breakup and my reactions. Like, I cannot help the fact that I am crying every day. I am really hurt, and it angered him. And towards when we were selling the house, I always said that was quite a poignant part of my breakup, because I remember him being really quite nasty, because I wasn't ready to move. I was trying to process everything else. Like, I wasn't then ready to throw a house move into the mix as well. I was really struggling mentally. I was in therapy twice a week, and the pressure was immense because he just wanted to cut ties. And I'm pretty certain he wanted to cut ties because he couldn't cope with what he had done. But equally, I took a mental battering more than he did. And the way that he was showing up and making me feel like I was almost like an emotional burden wasn't very nice. And I know that I said, because I remember sitting in a hospital car park once with my mum, and I know that I said on time and time again, countless times, I know he's really struggling as well, and I just shouldn't have said that. So I know that I made so many excuses for such poor behaviour, and I know that I shouldn't have done that. So we're going to deep dive into that. So hopefully it's a really good episode that you get some practical tips, some mindset tips. I've rambled on for 25 minutes, so let's get into it. So like I said, we are going to be talking about letting people show you who they are and stop making excuses when they do. Now, my notes are this side of the screen, and I have jam-packed this episode with practical advice. So my eyes are going to be shifting that way. I do apologise. I know it is distracting, but I wanted to make this episode quite strategic, and easy to follow. So I'm going to cover why we make excuses for people that we love, how to shift your mindset when you are struggling with them showing up as a different person, what it really means to accept their behaviour without approving it, and what steps you can take when somebody shows up as a person that you hoped that they weren't, or that you hope that they could never become. So we're going to go through it like that, and I'm going to start off with talking to you about why we make excuses. And I think this is because, it is for me, I try and rationalise everything. I have said so many times on this podcast that I am very black and white. Grey areas, no. And I will always try and pull a conclusion from something. And I always laugh because in my old job, that everybody used to say, that I used to say, you are bringing me problems, not solutions. I will always try and find a solution in a problem. And I think when somebody's nasty and you can't understand why, you will try and rationalize it. So the excuses come from a like rationalization point of view. And I'm going to use my breakup as an example. So I wanted my ex to talk more to me about how he was feeling because I wanted to make things right, and I thought that we had like a fighting chance of getting back together. I thought we had something worth fighting for. So when he wasn't talking, I instantly was thinking, he's just not good with his words. He's just not good with his words. He's just doesn't show up that way, and he won't emotionally connect with me, and he finds it hard to open up. And he doesn't mean to say these things. He just doesn't know how to articulate himself. He's obviously just scared a little bit of commitment now. And, you know, he's got a bit of like pre-wedding jitters. And whilst all of those things can be true, and I will say there is nothing wrong with struggling to open up, struggling to talk about your feelings, it still hurts you. They've still disrespected a boundary of yours if you've got boundaries in place. They still haven't shown up for you. And so when I say like you make excuses, that's why you do that. However, you can't then forget that that still hurts you. What you can't be doing is putting them on a pedestal and saying they're really, really bad with communication, and like down here is the amount that they've hurt you. It shouldn't be like that. You should still be able to accept the fact that, okay, fair, they can't talk about their emotions, but they've still hurt you. And so the mindset shift that you have to have here is and start paying attention to their impact. Because intentions can be kind, but it's the impact that you have to live with. And so if someone is kind and means well, but still makes you feel small, hurt, confused, that is the reality that you have to respond to. Not, oh, they didn't mean it. That's not the impact that it's having on you. They didn't mean it. The impact is the hurt of what they've said when they said it. And that's what you have to live with. And I think the only practical advice that I would be able to give you with this, and it's something that my therapist used to say to me all the time, and I've mentioned it on my Patreon, I've probably mentioned it on a couple of my hour-long episodes as well, is that notice your body language. Because I disregarded it all the time. Every single time my ex would start a conversation off with a certain phrase or like where I knew the conversation was going, my stomach would drop. I'd go hot and I'd feel the heat like prickle up the back of my head. And I would get like that real stomach drop feeling. And like my chest would tighten and I would know that I was about to hear something that I didn't want to hear, or I was about to have a conversation that I knew wasn't going to give me the outcome that I wanted. And yet I was still there thinking, it's okay because he's really struggling with his words at the moment. My whole body was telling me, you're in fight or flight. Like you are literally, your nervous system is telling you, alarm bells, whoa, Lou, step away from the conversation. And I think here my practical advice would be, and obviously my practical advice is always about journaling. It's always about getting it in it out, because when you see things on paper, you realize what you're doing. So make a massive long list every single time you have a conversation with your ex or with a person. Listen to what you're saying. Really home in on listen to what you're saying. Not even with them, with other people, when you are relaying back, say, an argument or relaying back a conversation that you had with them. Think about what you're saying and journal it out. What excuses are you making? What excuses are constantly coming up after an argument? What are you actually saying and putting out there like, oh, he does this, she does that because, he does that because. Write it down. See the amount of excuses that you are making for somebody and not the things they're saying for themselves. I don't think ever my ex ever said to me, I'm just struggling right now, I'm really sorry. I don't think he ever admitted ever struggling. But I was telling people he was really struggling, but I didn't know that because he didn't tell me. It was just my excuse. And yes, I held compassion for his pain. I felt really sorry for him. I know that he was struggling, especially in the early days. I know he really hated how much he actually hurt me. And I know every single time he came to see me, I know that he was hurt. But like, a couple of months later, when I was watching how he was living and I was still making excuses, and like I said, like I had compassion for his pain, but I didn't need to justify how he was treating me because he was treating me how he was treating me. And I think in a nutshell, that is why we make excuses for people, because you don't want to accept it as well. And you have to, like I said, with the mindset shift, like you have to stop focusing on their intentions and start paying attention to the impacts it is actually having on you. Because I was getting no further on with my breakup. I was getting no further answers. And yet when I was seeing people, I was like, oh God, yeah, no, he's just had a really, really hard time. Like he's really struggling, like he's having a really rough week. But he wasn't. I was. So like I said, that is why we make excuses. It's not about saying, I don't care about how you feel. You know, I know you're struggling. It's accepting that their behaviour is still hurting you. And you're allowed to accept the fact that their behaviour is still hurting you. I also think that what we do as humans is that we try and translate someone's actions without just, you know, thinking, I'm going to let them show up like this. We then deep dive and try and translate it. People are constantly communicating, even in silence. Even in silence. No texting back, that's a communication. Being inconsistent, that's communication. Only showing up when it's like convenient for them, making plans, you know, coming to talk to you, having like the chats that you want to have with them when it's convenient for them. Loud and clear, communication. We are always communicating. That's why I said you're always communicating. No communication is communication. And I'm going to ask you a question that my therapist asked me once was, what happens if you stopped translating their red flags into potential? You are not their therapist. You are not their fixer. I am having this conversation at the moment with one of my close friends. You were not put on this earth to fix somebody. You were there to support them. Of course, in a relationship, you have to support them. You have to compromise. People do bring certain things into relationships that you have to be aware of. People do go through a lot of emotional turmoil before they meet you, and I understand that. However, if that then in a breakup is being used to hurt you, or, you know, the way they're acting is hurting you, you are not there to fix them. And I know you want to, because my God, I listed off therapists. I showed my ex where he could go to therapy. I sent him podcasts. I sent him Instagram posts. I tried to fix him. I tried to help him with what he was going through. But the truth of the matter is, you cannot help somebody who does not want to be helped. And this might sound harsh, but you are not the exception that's miraculously just going to make them better. You aren't going to be able to change somebody overnight. I always say this, that like, you are not their therapist, you are not their fixer. If they are having difficulty with it now, it's not just going to change overnight. And I did this the whole time, the early days of my breakup. This was the thing that I was stuck in the most. I was trying to get him to come and talk to me about how he was feeling, but I was giving him like 2 weeks. So I was like, in 2 weeks, come and see me. In 3 weeks, come and see me. Because I thought that he would have been able to go away and completely kind of change the way that he thought. But actually, it's embedded in him. And even though I was together with him for such a long time, I could not change that. Nobody is going to come into your ex's life and be like, I can change them and it actually work. It's things like this, not being able to understand how it feels like to love somebody, not being able to talk about your feelings, talk about your emotions. It is ingrained in somebody and you are not going to change that overnight. So you need to stop making excuses. You are a human being with needs, desires, boundaries. If they show you chaos, distance, disrespect, that's them not being mysterious. That's not them struggling. That is information for you to be able to take away and think, hold on a second, what are these behaviours showing me? And I think here it's really good to use the advice that I give quite a lot of, like the friend filter, or like, if you were to take yourself out of the situation and be looking in, say if you were watching a film, what would you be shouting at the TV? What would you be saying to a friend if your friend was telling you that story? So if your friend was telling you your story, what would the advice be to give to them? I always say about giving people time and giving people space, and I talk about on my Patreon about how much time I feel like you should realistically give somebody. However, I think when someone has said something or someone has shown up in a certain way, I think you need to cool off, give them 3-5 days, and don't immediately make an excuse for their behaviour and see if it happens again. Because I did this a lot, and I will say this a lot, and I talk about it a lot. I was telling my ex what he was doing, and my friend's doing this at the moment. And the only reason why I'm pointing it out is because that I did it. And I was telling my ex what he was doing. He was fully aware of what he was doing. He was doing it. But I was telling him. So then I was saying, well, you're only doing that because of X, Y, and Z. You're only acting in a way because of X, Y, and Z. No, he was acting in that way. It's because that's how he wanted to show up for the world. That was the person that he was showing up for now. And it was hard to obviously digest because he hadn't been that person for 14 years. But that's what he was showing me. He was showing me a side to him that I hadn't ever seen because I'd never gone through a breakup with him. I'd never pushed him to his limits with talking about his emotions. We'd never had to discuss, finances or anything like that because we were always together as a team. And I think what people forget is that when you separate, you separate. So you have your own problems then, and each other's problems usually go head to head with each other. So the fact that I was seeing a different side to him, but saying oh, he's really stressed. No, someone could have seen that side to him when pushing him previously. But again, I wouldn't have known about that because it wasn't directly impacting my life. However, it was now showing up in a certain way that was hurting me, and I was still making excuses for him. So you cannot be blamed for making excuses for them because you don't want them to be that person. You want them to be the person they were and had been in the whole of your relationship. But sometimes that is just not reality. And I think the mindset shift with that has to be the fact that stop translating their red flags. Stop translating their red flags and thinking, oh, if we just got past this, they could do this. If they just went back to how they were in the relationship, we could move forward like this. Stop translating their red flags into potential and start seeing them as the person that they are showing up as now. I will just say, and I obviously said in the intro that accepting is not approval. So accepting that they are showing up in this way is not approval for the bad behavior. I'm not saying that. There is definitely a difference, and that has to be made clear. Just because you let them show up in a certain way does not mean that you are okay with it or have to be okay with it. You are allowed to say to them, your behavior is hurting me and I'm walking away. You can say to them, I see who you are, I see who you're showing up as, and that's not what I want. And I don't want to communicate with you when you are showing up as this person because it's really difficult to communicate with you. So many times I said to my ex, I'm not having this conversation with you because I'm literally getting nothing from it, just hurt, just constant hurt. You're not giving me anything. You're literally just hurting me. And I think the more you point out certain behaviors, the more you point out patterns, the more you say to them, I accept that this is your pattern and this is your behaviors, but I don't want to keep participating in it. You will find that they probably don't like that because it's almost saying you're pointing out a bad behavior, and trust me when I say they do not want to be the villain. They don't want to show up as the villain because they have their story as well, and especially when they have done stuff that has been wrong, they will not want to show up as the villain. So the fact that you are pointing out a bad behavior and saying, I'm not participating in this, I'm taking the higher ground, is probably going to prompt an emotional response as well. I think it's really important here to remember, and taking it back to a mindset shift, is that it's not a case of being cold or cold-hearted or being able to switch off your emotions. You are choosing to see them as who they are. You are practically saying to yourself that you are choosing truth over potential, because in a breakup, we all know that we get caught up on the potential of what could have been if they didn't just do that, what could have been. But actually what they're now doing is giving you some truth. Like I said, not communicating is communicating. They are giving you so much truth to be able to say, this isn't a type of person that I actually want to be in a relationship with. And when you bring yourself back and when you stop yourself from making excuses, your mind is then clearer and the bad behaviours stick more because you haven't told yourself, oh, it's because of that, and softened the blow. It's still there. The hurt is still there. It's whatever they've done, whatever they said. If you do not make an excuse for it, they have no way of getting away with it because it's stuck with you and it's there. And you are actually protecting yourself for no longer. You're protecting yourself by not abandoning yourself. You're protecting yourself because you are saying to yourself, you know, I'm giving myself space to grieve. You're grieving the loss of who they were. You're able to feel pain. You are able to feel pain about what they did, and you can still choose to accept all of that and move forward. This is not me saying you just have to say, okay, see you later. You can still be hurt by what they have done. I'm not saying that, but you are just choosing truth over potential. And the practical advice that my therapist gave me on this, which I thought was really, really powerful, was making 2 lists. I remember my ex actually shouting at me. Well, I wasn't shouting, but like telling me off for like doing these sorts of exercises because I was just reminding myself of like us going through a breakup. No, I was actually making it clear in my head what I was going through. But we made a list, and list A was the potential. List A was the person that I wanted my ex to be. He was everything that he showed up in our relationship, and then what I wanted the outcome of our breakup to be. Everything went down on that list. And then list B was the constant behaviours that he showed me throughout our breakup. The constant hurt, the constant pain, the actions, everything went down on that list, and I compared them together and they didn't match up. There was such a huge gap, and it was like, hold on a second, if this gap is so huge, what happens in the middle of that gap? What do we need to do to get here? There was a lot of work that needed to be done. In between that gap, there should have been one heading, and it should have been therapy, and I was the only one that did that. I was the only one that went to therapy. I was the only one that made a decision to not accept the fact that I had been left with certain wounds that I didn't want to take forward into new relationships or my future. And I will say, and it was a hill that I'm willing to die on, he's still that person. He is still that person on that list. That other list is basically the list that I'm taking forward when I'm ready to meet my next partner. Because I think, yes, once upon a time he was that person, but he shows up as this person now. And it was so powerful to see the amount of space that was between those like 2 people. It wasn't just small little fixes. They were huge. It was big things that I could have no control over. I couldn't control the fact that he couldn't speak about his emotions. The only person that was ever going to make that better was him, and he didn't want to. So the gap was massive, and it was a really good exercise to be able to see that. We all know that I'm quite visual. I saw it on paper, and it made me realize how big a gap that was and what I was asking for and how they were showing up. And I think it's important as well here, and if you haven't done and if you're not doing already, is to create a boundary. Even if it's not reaching out, you know, after an argument, just creating those little boundaries is a healthier way for you to sort of firm and know that you're not approving this behavior. You are saying, do you know what? I see you. I'm not participating in this. This is the boundary. I don't want to talk to you for 24 hours. Creating those little boundaries will mean that you get more confident with creating boundaries. And we all know how important it is when you have had no boundaries like me in a relationship, how important it is during a breakup to create boundaries. So like I said, I wanted this to be a practical episode, and now I want to talk about what do you do when you see them like this. So it's all well and good me talking about it, but it's like, hold on a second, Lou, they're showing up like this, so what do I do? And how do I get through this? Because they're showing up as a person that I didn't even know that they had capabilities of being. And I talk about this on my Patreon when I told my ex once that he reminded me of somebody who we didn't like. And I was like, you're basically as bad as him. And I saw anger like instantly in his eyes because he didn't like it. He didn't like the fact that I was saying, you're showing up as this person and I don't like that. And I think a lot of this advice has to do with you and what you have to do, and you controlling your mind, and you getting to grips with your mindset, and you being able to do the practical things that I tell you to do. Because I'm not going to be able to say to you, pick up this pill, pick up this book, do this, go to this area, and it's all going to be resolved. Healing from a breakup isn't like that. It comes down to with you and how disciplined you are with yourself. And the first thing I will say is that your mind, obviously I talk about mindset all the time, getting control of your mind will bring you so much peace. And the mindset shift here when they're showing up as this person is that clarity is a gift even when it hurts. You have got clarity of the person that they are, not clarity on the situation, the person that they are. They have shown up in this way, and you can clearly see that that is the person that they are, and they have the potential to become. Why would you want to fight for somebody who has shown up in a way that has hurt you so badly? Why would you then say, oh, do you know what? We can still fight through it. We can still work through it. They've clearly shown you the type of person that they can be. And like I say, this is why I said, I never thought my ex could be that person. I never thought it. And even when he's shown me he was, I still made excuses. I still was like, oh, do you know what? You know, X, Y, and Z. No, it was clear as day. It was there. I've then seen him since, and he still shows up as being that person. He still will look at me in a way where I think, that isn't my ex-fiance. That is a person that hurt me to my core. I can see it, that he's shown me that clearly. And like I said, with that list, don't want anything to do with it. And when you see somebody so clearly like that, and this doesn't happen overnight, it does take time, but when you clearly see somebody and clearly make a judgment on their actions, which is what you should be doing, you no longer live in this emotional debt. You can then be free to make informed choices. And you know what was funny about my breakup? When I was telling people certain stories, they were then replying with certain stories that I had never heard about my ex. And it was almost like I was getting validation from saying, I can't understand how he's being like this. Like, he's just showing up as being this person. And then someone would say something and I'd be like, really? And it was like, hold on a second, was I shielded? And I probably was, because obviously, like, I was completely besotted with him. He could do no wrong in my eyes, which is why it took me so long to actually clearly see the person that he has become, and clearly the person that he wanted to show up in the world to. And that is fine, because it has nothing to do with me. How somebody shows up in the world has nothing to do with you, because I know how I show up, and I know that I'm proud of the person that the world sees. You know, I'm proud of the person that I show up as being. And practically, I think you should 100% be making a list in your journal of, like, anchoring your self-concept. What do you deserve? What are you tolerating? What are you not tolerating? How do you want to feel in a relationship moving forward? If you want to feel in that way, does that person fit into that? Of course he doesn't. Do you want to be feeling hurt and emotionally destroyed all the time? No. What is that person making you feel like? Hurt and emotionally destroyed. Anchor your self-concept. Really get to grips with, like, writing down and seeing it out on paper, seeing what you will tolerate. Because I know for a fact, and I know that everybody listening to this, if your best friend came to you and told you the stories of how your ex was treating you, you would not turn around and say, oh, but they're probably going through a really hard time at the moment. Just bypass it, just ignore that behavior. You're going to be like, wake up. What are you doing? Why are you sticking around for this behavior? It's horrible. How are you dealing with this? Like, you deserve so much more. Why are you telling somebody that they deserve so much more and then literally not accepting your own advice? You have to create a new standard. You have to create a new standard. And there's so much online about, hiring your standards and you're not lowering your standards to certain people. It doesn't have to be malicious. Create a new standard. Write out, going forward, I will not excuse the behavior that looks like X, Y, and Z. Put it somewhere visible. Write it down. Remind yourself. It's not about saying, I'm not accepting this because he's so below my standards. That's not what I mean. Create a new standard for yourself in the fact that you can say to somebody, this behavior's happened to me before. I don't like it. I'm out. Protect yourself. You are constantly opening yourself up to more hurt. I will say, with chest, The less you journal, the less you won't see it. The minute that I put pen to paper and saw what I was writing, I wrote out a list of everything that my ex did to me, and I could not believe what I had tolerated. If I went back and looked at that list now, it would be extremely triggering, and I'd probably get very upset, because now the person that I've become and the person that I've created and the person that I protect every single day, I would just not stand for that sorts of behaviour. And the hindsight is a beautiful thing, and it would be amazing to be able to have gone through the breakup that I went through now, having known what I know now from the breakup. Like, I would love to be able to go back and just say to that version of myself, like, you don't have to deal with this. Like, this is not something that you need to deal with. You can actually say you're showing up as being somebody that I don't actually want to get in a conversation with, get in an argument with. And you can still process the hurt that it brings to you with the people around you. You don't have to try and go through the hurt together. That's something that I tried to kind of justify. I was like, we're going through a breakup, but we're going to get through this together. How do you get through a breakup together? You don't. You literally don't. But I was so naive back then because I'd never been through a breakup. Hence the reason why I sit here week in, week out and speak for an hour. Because if somebody is listening to this and is in the same position as me, going through their first breakup, you feel blind. It's like the blind leading the blind. I was like a mole. I had no idea what I was doing, no idea what direction I was going in. And all I wanted to do was for it to just stop. And it was just, I was being hurdled and I was being thrown just situation after situation, hurt after hurt. It was so emotionally overwhelming. And then I was making excuses because I just didn't want it to happen. I was making excuses for him. It's just not where you need to be. It's not going to be a place that you are going to heal healthily in. And I just wanted to finish by saying that you are doing your goddamn best. You are doing your best. If you are listening to this episode thinking, oh my God, Lou, I am not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to put into action everything you've said. I'm not going to be able to stop making excuses. Start small and start with the little affirmations that are going to reinforce that you have got this and that you can do this. And like, you can say to yourself, like, I can see you clearly now. Like after an argument, instead of emotionally fighting back and saying, you're only doing this because of X, Y, and Z, sit and think in your head, you are showing me exactly who you are. I can see you incredibly clearly for who you are. And I trust what I see. I trust completely what I see. This is because this is who you are and this is who you're showing up as. Remind yourself that you can release the need to excuse people's behaviors, excuse and explain people's behaviors, people's choices. Release that. You don't need to do that. You need to concentrate on how you're reacting. And I will say this before, I have quite a hot temper and I can flip quite quickly. If I am in a situation where I'm very, very, very emotional, it's not something that like I've got a temper on an everyday basis. That's not that. But I do have a temper when I'm being riled up. Think about your emotional responses. Flip it on its head and think, okay, you're showing up like this. I'm going to show up like this. Be calm. Be not the bigger person. It's not the case of being the bigger person. It's honoring yourself, knowing that you wouldn't want to show up in the world as that person. So don't. Be the person that says, do you know what? I'm not involving myself in this behaviour because this is a behaviour that it just does not serve me at all. And I would hate to have that behaviour in me. And I did that a lot. I used to think, God, I'd hate that. And I would sit there and be like, that is one thing that I don't want to do. You know, certain behaviours, certain, situations that I was put in, I used to step back and think, I'm never going to do this to somebody else, ever. And I think finally, you just have to remember that like you do have to let them become that person. And if they want to do that, fine. You have got the rest of your life ahead of you. You have got the rest of the year ahead of you. You've got the rest of the month ahead of you to start learning how to protect yourself. You've got to learn how to protect yourself. The minute you learn how to protect yourself, the minute that little bits of pain stop coming in, you don't have to build a barrier around your heart. You can still feel pain. You can still honor your pain. You don't have to protect your heart so much that you never let anybody else in. But the little sort of boundaries and being able to say, hey, do you know what? I'm not engaging with you in this conversation because this behavior is really hurting me and you're not aware that that's what you're doing. That frightens me and I don't want to get any more hurt. I opened myself up to so many conversations that actually felt like someone was shoving a hot iron rod down my throat. Like, hence the reason why this is called Coming Up for Air, because I genuinely felt sometimes that I was never going to come up for another breath from a panic attack, that I couldn't speak because I was so hurt. And I would get off the phone and I would like literally, my chest would be so tight and I would feel so sad. And sometimes I used to think like there is no way on this earth that I am ever going to allow anybody to hurt me in this way ever again. And then you become clued up on how you're going to protect yourself, because that is the most important part. Thank you for being here with me today. This work is not easy. It is not for the faint-hearted. Some of these episodes, I always say, you know, you might not feel like you want to listen to the whole episode now. You might not be ready to hear it. But you can always come back to, you know, depending on where you are in your breakup, you can come back to these episodes, you can re-listen to them. It's good to be able to listen to them. And if you don't feel like you can apply this to your life, then at least you know that they're here and there's something that you can work towards for definite. Letting someone show you who they are is not a weakness. Being able to stand there and not arguing back and not saying, but you're doing this because of X, Y, and Z. Staying silent, like I said, is communication. However, knowing that someone is showing up in a certain way and actually identifying it is strength. It's wisdom. It's you stepping into the kind of self-respect that changes your life. The respect that you have for yourself. I have so much respect for myself, and I have built that up over these 3 years of when I've been healing. I hope this episode has helped. Please let me know if it has. Please leave me a review. I don't ask for reviews or comments, but please leave me a review. Please leave me a comment if you've listened to this and it has helped. You might want to go back and just take the practical advice out of each segment that I have done, which is fine. Let me know if the journal prompts and the mindset shifts help you. Like I always say, you can go and join me on my Patreon. In my Stand store, I have the Become the Strongest Version of Yourself course. Like I've hinted in this episode, I am looking to potentially go forward into sort of a coaching environment. If that's something that you think that you would be interested in, then let me know that as well. You can just drop me a DM. My email is also in my TikTok bio, and I think it's in my Instagram bio. I'm not sure. It's definitely on my Stand store link. So the link in my bio on all of my social platforms, you'll be able to contact me through there. As always, guys, have yourselves a brilliant weekend. I'm always around. I'm always active on any form of social media. If you need me, please reach out. If you are not on my Patreon, I will see you next Friday. If you are on my Patreon, I'll check in with you on Wednesday. Look after yourself, guys. Bye.